How much does this affect business?
I think it's going to affect it significantly, Joe. I think the reality is that probably there was a sense in some in the White House that felt like we avoided having a vote on this prior to the August recess. And so it buys us time. It maybe buys them time, but I'm not sure it goes away. I think the reality is when members are back in their districts, they're going to continue to hear from their constituents because this has been a white-hot issue for Republicans. And I think, it's important to remember that many of the most conservative influencers on the right were ginning up the story about, some sort of more nefarious details of prominent Democrats who were caught up in this scandal. And they expect it to come out. And so I think that you're going to see more actually Republicans sign on to the discharge petition, forcing the hand of the Speaker to have a vote on this.
Do you think, though, that this risks perhaps the appropriations process? Is this going to take up so much room when lawmakers do get back that we could be looking at this showdown headed when it comes to the fall?
Well, Tyler, I'm pretty cynical on the appropriations process in general. We haven't actually had Congress complete its appropriations bills on time since the Bill Clinton era. And so I would imagine you're going to have a continuing resolution. I'm not one who believes we actually have as high a risk of a shutdown. The early numbers from Democrats, Republicans in the White House are pretty close. But I think what you're just going to see is this punted to the end of the year and avoid a shutdown for now.
So no shutdown. Good for President Trump. But there are other matters at hand. We've talked a lot recently about rescissions. We were promised another one if the last one passed. Yeah. Not to mention the potential for another reconciliation bill. Not to get too overboard here. Would there be another rescissions package? Because this is what sent Democrats to the Hills saying we're going to shut it down.
I think that there could be another rescissions package at some point later in the fall. I would imagine it's after the September 30th vote for a continuing resolution. But I also think the White House is looking to have a fight with Congress on the Impoundment Act. And so I think they're wanting to bait having a rescissions package that actually fails. So then they can say, see, Congress isn't serious about this. We just have to impound the funds and set up a legal battle for later in the year.
That is actually really interesting because we've actually spoken to some Republicans who say that they don't want to see another rescissions package. And this idea, I'd love your take, that Congress is giving up its power of the purse here instead of working with the administration perhaps on another priority to get done.
Well, Tyler, look, Congress has already given up its ability to tax the American people with the trade policy of the current administration. And I think that is something that the Constitution very clearly rests in the legislative branch. And so there's a lot of things that they have been giving up lately. But I also think that the rescissions package that passed was really the smallest of small. It was the most narrow thing that they could do. So I think the fact if you have a second one, I do think the chances of it passing are much less than the first one.
I want to ask you about tariff checks, the idea of rebate checks going out. The president was asked about it this morning. Josh Hawley followed up with legislation. Let's start with what the president said on his way out of the White House to Scotland.
We have so much money coming in. We're thinking about a little rebate, but the big thing we want to do is pay down debt. But we're thinking about a rebate. That's a very good question. You just made a lot of news. We're thinking about a rebate because we have so much money coming in from tariffs that a little rebate for people of a certain income level might be very nice.
Okay, a little rebate, he says. Just like that, Senator Josh Hawley's office puts out a tweet, Hawley to introduce legislation sending rebate check to every working American. You see it on Bloomberg TV and YouTube, saying that he will introduce such legislation for, Marc, every working person in America. Isn't this what Republicans criticized Joe Biden for 2 years?
Yeah, Joe, I've never seen a Republican administration with so many central planners in their economics department. I think it's amazing to see that you said this is basically the policies of the Democrats, which you've seen in the last couple of years. The Republicans advanced legislation to raise the federal minimum wage. You've seen Republicans embrace more regulations. And so I think it reflects the dramatic shift economic in the Republican Party. I think rather than sending rebate checks, it's important to remind people that the money rolling into the Treasury is a tax on the American people. It's not a foreign government paying the tariff. It's American citizens paying the tariff. So rather than giving a rebate check, one thing to do would actually be to lower the tariffs if that's what they want to do to provide help for working families.
Wow.
Well, let's sort of thread the needle here between perhaps a Reconciliation 2.0 package, but then also the idea that tariff revenue is supposed to be helping to pay down what we saw was added when it comes to deficit spending from the first reconciliation package. Can you sort of connect the dots for us here? What are we looking in a Reconciliation 2.0? House Speaker Mike Johnson told us this week that they're already starting to work on it. Would it be, significantly adding to the deficit in terms of the types of priorities that might end up getting wrapped into it?
Tyler, I think the talk of a reconciliation package 2.0 is happy talk. I don't think you're going to see that. I think the reality is that the first bill had all the major priorities of both Congress and the administration. And in some ways, when they talk about a second package, they're almost even searching for what they would put in it. So I think that that's one to give prospect and hope for the voters to say, we're going to continue working on this. I don't think you're going to see one.
I want to ask you quickly about the president's trip to the Fed yesterday while you're with us, as someone who's a bit more financially minded than some in Washington. This power play by the president is going to result, apparently, in very little. He's not going to get fired.
Sure.
He's not going to step down. Nobody expects the Fed to cut interest rates next week. What's Donald Trump doing?
Well, I guess I have a little different perspective. I think
I can't wait to hear it.
Well, I think for the president, he views this as a no-lose situation. As you said, it's a small chance, but either A, Powell actually concedes and lowers rates, which is what Trump wants. B, Powell gets tired of this and quits, which Trump would be fine with, too. C, if actually the tariff policy begins to have a negative impact on the economy in the second half of the year, he has an out to blame. See, I told the Fed they shouldn't lower rates, so it's the Fed's fault. And D, Joe, this basically is basically a signal he's sending up for whoever succeeds Powell. Whoever succeeds Powell, he's sending a clear message like, I'm going to make your life hell or you're going to lower rates. And so for him, I think it's a no-lose situation for the president.